Hi, I'm Benton's dad, aka Alan, and this is Intentional Ink. This is my AFL showcase, a video decades in the making. There are really two reasons for my affinity for the American Football League, which lasted or existed from 1960 until 1969. One being this gentleman here, as drawn by Eric of Four Leaf Cards, Joe Namath. The other reason being a magazine like this one. This is the AFL Players Yearbook. This is the 1969 edition. When I was in the 7th grade, every male student was given a copy of one of two periodicals such as this one, the 1968 NFL Players Autograph Yearbook or the 1968 AFL Players Autograph Yearbook. I no longer have that version or edition because I cut it up and used the photos in scrapbooks. But several years ago, I picked up this 69 edition of the AFL Players Autograph Yearbook, which is very similar to the 68. And I received, when I was in the 7th grade, I received a copy of the AFL Players Yearbook. And that sort of fueled my interest in the American Football League, which has evolved into what you might call an innocent obsession. This video, I have 91 cards to show you today, so we should probably get to it. There are three aspects to this project. The first being the 2010 Club. There are 20 players who spent all or parts of the 10 seasons in the American Football League, the 10 seasons that the league existed. Some of these are placeholders. I do have autograph cards for some of these. Alphabetically, they are George Blanda, Billy Cannon, Gino Cappelletti, Tom Flores, Larry Grantham, Wayne Hawkins, which is signed in ballpoint pen, Jim Hunt, which is unsigned, Harry Jacobs, Jack Kemp, who later became a United States Senator, Jackie Lee, Paul Lowe, which is unsigned, Paul McGuire, Bill Mathis, Don Maynard, who you will see again, Ron Mix, which is unsigned, Jim Otto, unsigned, Babe Parilli, Namath's backup during the 68 Super Bowl season for the Jets, Johnny Robinson, Paul Rochester, and Ernie Wright, which is unsigned. A couple of coaches were also involved in the AFL for all 10 seasons. Sid Gilman, who had to step aside during the middle of the 10th season because of illness, but he returned to coach the team a couple years later. And Hank Stram, this is signed, by the way, who won 3 American Football League championships. Okay, the second aspect are the all-time teams. We have the first team, led by quarterback Joe Namath, who you can see is also in the National Football League Hall of Fame. Paul Lowe, running back. Clem Daniels, running back, who was the AFL's all-time rushing leader, the only person to register over 5,000 or more yards. Lance Bambi Allworth, wide receiver. Don Maynard, wide receiver. You notice that both of those previous two players are in the NFL Hall of Fame. Fred Arbanis, the tight end. Jim Otto, Hall of Fame center. Guards Ed Buddy and Hall of Famer Billy Shaw. Tackles Ron Mix, a Hall of Famer, and Jim Tyrer. Kicker George Blanda, Hall of Famer. The defense, Jerry Mays, defensive end. Jerry Philbin, defensive end. Houston Antwine, defensive tackle. Tom Sestak, unsigned, defensive tackle. Linebackers, Bobby Bell is in the NFL Hall of Fame. Nick Buoniconti, who's also in the Hall of Fame. And George Webster. Secondary consisted of, first team secondary consisted of Willie Brown, a Hall of Famer. George Sames. Dave Grayson. And Hall of Famer Johnny Robinson. The punter, first team AFL all-time punter is Gerald Wilson. And the first team coach, Weeby Bank, who led the Jets to the win in Super Bowl III. One of the greatest upsets in the history of pro sports. All right, the second team. Quarterback Lenny Dawson, a Hall of Famer. Running back Cookie Gilchrist, this is unsigned. Running back Abner Haynes. Receivers Charlie Hennigan. Art Powell. Tight end Dave Kokurik. Center John Morris. Guard Walt Sweeney and Bob Talamini. Sweeney and Talamini. Tackles Stu Barber and Hall of Famer Winston Hill. Kicker Jim Turner. Defense ends Rich Jackson. Ron McDowell. Tackles Buck Buchanan, a Hall of Famer. And Tom Keating. Linebackers Dan Connor. Larry Grantham, a member of that Super Bowl III team. And Mike Stratton. Secondary, Butch Beard, Miller Farr, Goose Gonsolin, unsigned, and Kenny Graham. The second team punter, Barb Scarpito, and the second team coach, Sid Gilman, who was also in the NFL Hall of Fame. All right, the third aspect of this video as we wind it down. Those who played in the AFL who are members of the National Football League Hall of Fame, who I have not previously mentioned. This is Elvin Bethea, Fred Biletnikoff, unsigned, Larry Zonka, unsigned, Curly Culp, Bob Greasy, Ken Houston, John Henry Johnson, who played 1 year with the Houston Oilers, 1966, Charlie Joyner, the last active AFLer in the NFL, Willie Lanier, Floyd Little, unsigned, Larry Little, Art Shell, O.J. Simpson, dubious to say the least, the autographed and the individual. Ken Stabler, who did not play a game in the AFL, but was drafted by the Raiders in 1968, so spent time on the roster during the AFL era. Jan Stenerud and Gene Upshaw. And there were a couple of coaches. NFL star Sammy Baugh coached the New York Titans, which became the New York Jets in the first 2 years of their existence. You've seen Tom Flores before. He was inducted as a coach into the Hall of Fame. And finally, the man who started it all, AFL founder, Chiefs owner, Lamar Hunt, which is unsigned. All right, we've reached 12 minutes. I want to thank you for sticking with me. I want to wish everyone peace, love, understanding. Remember the AFL.